We've already talked about the importance of making gut calls and working with limited information. This section will address the following questions about inspiring risk-taking and learning by setting the example. What does it really mean to take risks and learn from mistakes? What prevents risk-taking from flourishing in more organizations? How can leaders set appropriate examples of risk-taking and inspire others to learn from their mistakes?
Winning companies embrace risk-taking and know how to learn from their mistakes. Taking risks involves investing time and energy in an endeavor that may fail. Success is never guaranteed. Learning from mistakes has to do with recognizing an error and in applying lessons learned to future endeavors with a goal of avoiding making the same mistake again. While many companies may claim to embrace risk-taking and learning from mistakes, these two values often get lip service and little else. Too many managers urge their people to try new things and then chastise them when they fail. But risk-taking, when rightly applied, helps to create an organization focused on learning.
There is no edict in the world that will make people take risks or spend their time learning. In most cases, their risk-reward equation just isn't obvious enough. If you want to change that, set the example yourself. As a leader, you can create a culture that welcomes risk-taking by freely admitting your mistakes and talking about what you've learned from them. You can also help team members go through this process when they make mistakes. Jack shared an example of learning from a big mistake that he made thanks to the support of his leader. Let's take a look.
I was running the pilot plant in a new plastic. I was sort of the manufacturing head of this little thing. I was 27. I had been working for 2 or 3 years. I got a PhD, and I was thinking I was some smart fellow, and I popped it. And I was in my office, and I heard this incredible explosion. And I looked out, and there was smoke and sort of a roof blown off and glass shattered everywhere across the way where the plant was. Well, my heart sunk. I didn't know whether we had, most importantly, hurt anybody. I mean, it was a terrible explosion. And so fortunately that didn't happen. The reactor worked the way it should have. The bolts broke off, and the reactor went right through the roof, the top, so we didn't shatter it this way, and we didn't injure anybody. And we didn't know exactly how to fix it. So my boss thought I should go down and explain it to his boss. Well, that was the longest night and the longest drive to Bridgeport, Connecticut, is 100 miles away, to explain this thing. Well, I didn't know this fellow well at all that I was going to go see. I wasn't sure what to expect, whether I was going to get canned or whether I was going to get, what would happen. I really didn't know. But I was self-confident enough to know that if something awful happened, I'd pack it up and go somewhere else. But I went down there, and he was incredible. Instead of asking me, what happened? What do you think happened? How do you fix it? This guy was a PhD chemical engineer, former professor at MIT, a sweetheart of a guy, and taught me a great lesson. That's that never kick somebody when they're down. And all he wanted to know was, did I know how to fix it? Could I come up with the right answer? And could I figure it out? Take your time, get it right. You didn't hurt anybody. Let's get on with this thing. It's one of the great things of working for a big company, the resources to be able to do that, and the support I got from it. So I always ended up, luckily, having mentors. My predecessor was great to me. We looked like opposites, yet he had the guts to hire me. I've been very fortunate that way.
Jack's boss set a great example by avoiding a negative reaction, showing sympathy, and asking probing questions about the issue. By reacting in this way, his boss taught Jack something more than a mere reprimand ever could. Learning from mistakes is, of course, not the only example that leaders can set. It is also important to embrace the best practices of others, including competitors, and give credit where credit is due. Whenever Jack learned about a best practice that he liked at another company, he would come back to GE and, in his own words, make a scene. He admits that sometimes he may have overstated the case, but he wanted people to know about the risks that others were taking and the positive results they were getting, and to constantly remind everyone that if they were not taking risks, their competition would definitely win the game.
Remember, just because you're the boss doesn't mean you're the source of all knowledge. Inspire your team to discover and share with each other good ideas from within the organization and good ideas from competitors. Leaders can set an example that creates a culture that welcomes risk-taking and learning by admitting your mistakes and talking about what you learned, rewarding your team for taking risks, and being humorous about your errors. Most mistakes, thankfully, aren't fatal. They may be painful and sometimes even expensive. But if you can have a bit of a chuckle, it helps everyone remember that nobody gets it right all the time. Take a look at the following video where Jack shares a story of rewarding his group for taking a risk at a business endeavor, even though it failed. What would your reaction be if you were a member of Jack's team, and how would you be inclined to perform in the future?
What are the inhibitors to growth?
Budgets, the one major one. A culture where risk-taking is not rewarded. Look, if you want to really grow internally, you've got to be. Look, my company did, and I approved 200 acquisitions a year. So we did an acquisition a day. Now, every acquisition I looked at had a 20% discounted rate of return. Why else would they bring them in? Now, 75% of them worked, maybe. 25% blew up. But the facts are, you got to take those chances. And if you shoot people who take risks in the culture of your company, you'll never get growth. So budgeting, shooting, a culture that doesn't reward risk. You have to, in a company, you have to exaggerate the behaviors you want. If you want to go out and start to grow, and people take risks and they fail, you've got to reward them publicly for taking the risk. And you've got to be partners with them because you approved it. We took a shot at it. It didn't work, but here it is. Now we're going to take more of them. And Mary, she was fantastic. She did it. And we're going to give her a raise for doing it, a management award. We tried to, and we did that once we tried to have a long life bulb, 10,000 hour bulb. It was going to cost $14 to buy. It was 15 years ago, before its time. Everybody's highly environmental until it comes to paying for it. So this bulb at $14 was by no means a big seller. And the whole project failed. And we spent, I think, $60 million. Now today you can get those long light bulbs for much lower prices as technology has improved. But we probably lost $60 million on it. We brought the whole team in to a ceremony at our review, and in those days it wasn't a big deal, but we gave them widescreen TVs with VCRs and other things, and celebrated the 22-person team that did that failed miserably. As an example of, it wasn't their fault, they had a hell of a product, the market wasn't ready for it, but we wanted to make the point that taking risks is the way to go. So you have to do all kinds of stuff like that if you're going to get that behavior you want.
Failures are nothing to feel great about, but Jack talked about them openly in order to show that it was okay to take a swing and miss as long as you learn from them. You don't need to be preachy or particularly somber about your errors. In fact, the more humorous and lighthearted you can be about them, the more people will get the message that mistakes aren't fatal. Leaders can help teams and companies win by embracing risk-taking and learning, and the best way to embrace this culture is to live it.